Hello, good day. Today's class, we are going to look at type of cell reference in Excel. And the three type of cell reference that we have are relative cell reference, absolute cell reference, and mixed cell reference. So before we go into discussing these three types of cell reference, so let's flash back on what we have discussed before. We have looked at cell reference when we are treating the features of cell Excel. So cell reference is an address that is pointing to a particular cell. And when we are making use of formula, we can actually use the address of the cell, that is, to get the content of that cell, we can actually use the address of the cell. So when we are making use of the address of a particular cell to get the content, I mean we are referencing the cell. So take for instance, I want to get this value 5. So I can refer to the cell that contains to value 5 by pressing the address of that cell equal to A4. So with that is getting me the value in cell A4. So I'm referencing that cell. So that is where the word cell reference actually come from. Okay. So in Excel, like I said, we have three types of cell reference: relative cell reference, absolute cell reference, and mixed cell reference. So when we make use of formula in Excel, okay, and the formula that we have used to get a value, I use equal to A4 plus B4. That's the formula that I use to get this calculated value, which is 12. Now, if I copy this formula and I put it in another cell, I paste it in another cell, then why didn't I have the same value? I should have the same value. But in the case of cell reference, it will actually change the two cells that we have referenced in getting the initial value. So the other two cells besides the down the worksheet. Okay. Now in this case now, the cell reference has been changed to A8 and B8. So that is how cell reference work. So by default, cell referencing is relative by default. Okay, by default cell reference is relative. So if I want to copy this formula into to get the addition of the other two values into their various D column, then all I need to do is to make use of autofill by dragging on this dot, on the dot here, and drag it down. So using the relative cell referencing, then it will automatically calculate the value from the two cells that correspond to the row of D. So that is how cell reference work. So cell reference, relative cell reference is the most widely used cell reference in the formula, except if you have some other reason to use absolute cell reference, then there is a way of using that. So an example of relative cell reference is when you just directly use the address of the cell without adding any other special symbol. But in the case of absolute cell reference, you will see the example here. A dollar sign is added to the column and a dollar sign is added to the row. Okay, so that is how a absolute cell reference is being defined. So take a look at the example here. We are to calculate the area of a circle of different radius, but in the formula of calculating the area of a circle, we know that we have a constant value, which is the pi. The pi is always 3.142. Now, instead of repeating the pi in the different cells, then we can just write it in one cell and refer to it. So that's why I'm putting the pi in cell G6. Okay, so I can now make use of absolute cell reference to get the value in this case. Okay, so I can make use of this the absolute cell reference, which is cell G6, to refer to the value here. Okay, now if I want to calculate the value this time around, then what I'm going to do is just to say equal to F6. So if I want to lock it, I can simply press F4. That is function key 4, multiply by F6 again. Then I'm going to lock it, then multiply by G6. Then I will lock it as well by pressing function key 4. Then press enter. Now what have I done? If you look at the formula, going by the formula of a circle, pi r square. So this is pi. Then you can see that I repeated my F6 twice. So pi r square. So if I copy this formula and I place it to get the other sorry, and I place sorry, and I place it to get the other area of a circle, which radius is 14, is not going to work. So let's copy it. Copy. Then if I put it here, so it's not going to give me the same answer. It's going to give me the same answer because the cells has been locked. Instead of working the way of relative cell referencing, it will not work that way. So because the cells have been locked, so I need to calculate them one after the other. Okay, so if I want to get for this now, I can simply say equal to pi, I log the cell, multiply by the radius, log the cell, multiply by the radius, log the cell, sorry, multiply by the radius again, then log the cell, then press enter. So this is how we get the use of absolute cell reference. Okay, now having said this, I can simply use this method that will also work. Okay, I will only lock my pi, then get this one without locking it and press enter. Then in this case, I can use my autofill. It will only change the unlock cells. That means it will not it will change to this and to this respectively. So let's check it. So that's that. So it will only lock the pi. So in this case, I have at least make use of relative and absolute, which is referred to as mixed value. So in some cases, you can have it done this way. You still have to achieve the same thing. Okay, so That is how